in order to introduce myself and Thirst Project, the work that we do together, I would love to use music. So I'm going to rap for you. Alright? Let me be clear for a second. The fellas in the room, in the back specifically. One, you guys are awesome. I love that the guys in the back, you guys are incredible, great spirit. Two, you guys got excited. For you and everybody else that got excited, I need you to lower your expectations. Alright? I need you to do me a favor. Everybody, just don't be excited. Alright? Because if you forgot the get to know you segment of this presentation, I'm a big white guy from Kentucky. Alright? I'm not even from Milwaukee, or anything like a city that has some credit that would contribute to a hip-hop career. So as your expectations are lowered, hopefully your senses are now heightened a little bit, leaning in to the final part of this opening session. I'm going to rap for you. And then I'm going to tell you why I rap for you. And I'm going to do it without a microphone. Alright? But, again, mainly for dramatic effects. Let's just be honest. Alright, here we go. If you're recording this, please don't. My wife would divorce me. She doesn't know I do this. Don't tell her. Here we go. Water is life. And if you don't believe it, then see this. It's in our makeup and what we take up. It's in all of biology, runs through our geology, sustains ecology, we call it hydrology, and then there is we. What's up, Ben? My name is Evan Wesley, and I'm a student with a dream to change the world of water, a dream for me that starts in small town Kentucky, so make no mistake, there's a lot at stake. And for the sake of this conversation, let's know we can change nations. Let's be clear, little your ear, so you can hear about the story to give and save a life, because water is life. That was it, y'all. It was really good. I'm about to tear up. I've been waiting 10 years for a standing ovation. I've been waiting 10 years for that, man. Now, I moved to Los Angeles for 10 years, and despite, based on what I just showed you, what might seem to be a pursuit of a musical career, it wasn't. I actually moved to Los Angeles about 10 years ago. I told you I more recently moved to Nashville, but I moved to Los Angeles for this organization called Thirst Project. Thirst Project's the world's largest youth water organization. I said earlier, we build freshwater wells in developing communities. We are trying to end the water crisis through your help. And I talked about music in the beginning because a couple things are true. As I asked the question, hey, who in here likes music? A lot of you had the audacity to say, yeah, I like music. Which I did. Most of us like music, but I took it a step further and I said, hey, who in here specifically likes hip-hop or pop or rap music? And not all of you. I wouldn't even say half of you raised your hand. That's just a really interesting question that I tend to ask around the world. And I was in Atlanta, Georgia last week, and the amount of people that answered yes to hip-hop, pop, and rap versus there versus here, it's just deeply interesting. And why it's interesting and why I use music is because music, ultimately, is doing one thing. It's inviting you to be a part of a community. It says, hey, do you want to fit into something that's a little bit bigger than you? And as you listen to lyrics and melodies and songs, you are listening to this invitation to belong to something that's bigger than yourself. It says, hey, if you want to fit in, hip-hop music invites you to be a part of a very specific community. You wear certain things, you talk a certain way, you act a certain way. Living in Nashville, Tennessee. Country music invites you to be a part of a very specific community. And as we change genres, we change invitations to be a part of this community. Well, why does this matter? Community is deeply important in all of our lives. And it was cool, I forgot who said it on the district board, but you teed it up, and we didn't even plan this, but the Winnie the Pooh quote talking about leaving your corner of the forest, that thing, I love that because there's an idea here that you are in a room. Once you go beyond your row, I can see how you're grouped together. You wear the same t-shirt, you don't make it harder, right? It's really easy. I know your groups, I know your schools, I know the community that you would probably identify when you stepped in the room. My hope is this. Over the next 48 hours, you go beyond your rows, you go beyond your t-shirt colors, and you don't look around the room and see a room full of strangers. The hope is you look around the room and you see a room full of friends that you haven't met yet. That's the hope. And that's the power of community. So as I talk about community and this importance of surrounding yourself with people that can make you better, why I tend to stress community in Key Club and in groups specifically as I talk about Thirst Project, there's a couple reasons, and the first is this. I may not know you well, but as young people, in the same way that I hoped when I was a high schooler, whenever I interacted with older adults, my hope was that every person I interacted with, they wanted what's best for me. Again, like I said, I don't know you very well, but I do want what's best for you, and I get to know Key Clubbers, and I've gotten to know Key Clubbers a lot over the last 10 years, and knowing what's best for young people is surrounding yourself with good community, because good community leads success. Success follows in the footsteps of community, and I'll prove it. An old African proverb. Here's what it says. It says, if you want to go fast in life, go alone. If you want to go far in life, go together. Let me translate that for you. Do you want to be successful? However you define it. Maybe that's making lots of money. Maybe that's traveling the world. Maybe that's pursuing higher education. Maybe that's going to a prom with somebody specific. I don't know what it looks like, but I do know if you want to be successful in life, you need to surround yourself with a group of people that are going to help you get there. You need to surround yourself with a group of people that will challenge you, enable you, and support you in that journey. Community and success, not only do I believe, but I have seen that they're directly connected. And so my first challenge to you today, honestly, unrelated to the Thirst Project, is use the next 48 hours to build new community. Use the next 48 hours to build bridges that you didn't think you would build, to connect with other people that, I don't want to overstate this, truly to change your life. I've talked with district board members who were district board members from different districts 7 to 8 years ago. They have since graduated high school, graduated college, and they are still talking to some of their district board members because they built Key community in Key Club, and they have friends for life who they now get to network with and share life with. And I think the same could be true for every single person in this room. Because I know the nature of Key Club, we had somebody stand on the stage a few minutes ago and use one word to describe Key Club. The word was caring. And I do believe Key Club is deeply caring, caring of the world, caring of other people. You are in a room full of people that care about your local community, care about the global community. And I believe that's a great place to start in building community. Talking about community, because we at Thirst Project, when we started 15 years ago, we had to identify those two very things that I want you to think about for yourself today. We had to identify, what does success look like? And again, I'd love for you to think that answer in your head right now. If you had to define success for your life right now, not as your question, what would you say? The cool part about that question is, I think if I asked it to you now versus 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, you would and should have different answers for it. How do you define success? Well, I don't care how you define it, I know how you find it, and it's through community. It's through a great group of people that will help you get there. And when we started 15 years ago as an organization, Thirst Project defined success as this. We said success was ending the global water crisis. Man, if we could give everybody in the world access to clean water, we've been successful. But like I just said, we've defined success, but success follows in the footsteps of community. We can't be successful without defining our community clearly. So we at Thirst Project said, if we want to end the water crisis, who's going to help us do it? And we chose you. We chose young people. We said students will be the difference makers. Students will be the ones to help us push the water crisis into the history books, and that's what brings me here today. I get to travel the world speaking to students just like you, educating young people about the fact that hundreds of millions of people don't have access to clean water, and I get to challenge young people with this idea that maybe, just maybe, you could do something about it. Maybe, just maybe, you could walk out of this room with an idea that you can impact thousands of lives today through the resource of clean water. So as I talk about community and success, Thirst Project, the Global Water Crisis, and Key Club, I need you to know that we're better together. We're better in partnership, we're better as a group, as a collective, and I believe in the power of what we can do together, and that's part of what I want to talk about over the next few minutes. Right now, over 700 million people don't have access to clean water. Over 700 million. And it's hard to imagine 700 million of anything, let alone people. And I can stand up here all day, and I can use statistic after statistic of people who don't have access to clean water and how it impacts their life. I can tell you that thousands of children right now die from completely preventable waterborne diseases. I can tell you that the average American, every single day, uses 100 gallons of water, while there are people around the world that are struggling to gain access to 5. Waterborne diseases, I can tell you the amount of miles that women and children walk every day to fetch water. I can tell you that hundreds of millions of hours are wasted every single year by women and children to collect water to where they now cannot go to school, little kids, or now can't go and get jobs as women. And as I share these statistics, I hope that they mean something to you, but to use numbers as big as 700 million. It's a massive number. Telling you 700 million people don't have access to clean water, oftentimes it's hard for us to connect with that reality. So what I'd love to do, in explaining our work at Thirst Project, explaining who we are, explaining what we do, I'd love to just share some stories. There are so many people that today still lack access to clean water in 2023, and it's crazy because the world we live in, there are self-driving cars. Isn't that crazy? I was driving down the interstate yesterday, and this guy was asleep at the wheel behind a Tesla. And I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, this guy's crazy. But I've never been in a Tesla. So like, maybe he's not, right? Because this technology is available. The technology we have at our hands is crazy, yet there are still hundreds of millions of people that lack access to a basic resource like clean water. And we, when I say we, I mean Thirst Project and Key Club, are here to do something about it. So just give me a few minutes, I'm gonna share some stories. These stories are of real people that I've really met who are really experiencing a very real water crisis. And while I share these stories, I'd love to challenge you with this thought. Hey, what would your life look like if every single day you didn't have water readily available to you? You couldn't go back to your hotel room and turn on the sink or jump in the shower. You couldn't go to the bathroom, or you couldn't go back to that corner right there and grab a little cup of water, but instead, you had to walk hours to fetch water that wasn't even clean, so you and your family could have something to drink, to wash with, to cook with, etc. My first story I want to start with, it's a little boy, and his name is Goopa. And Goopa's on the right, and Sandis was on the left. Let's see if I can get my clicker working here. I think it's on. Let me get closer. Is this computer we're working with? Sometimes I have to get really close. I'm really close right now. This is... No? Yeah, I'm going to give this to you all. If you want to advance it for me, we can do this later. But as I share some stories... Here you go. Oh, we're back. Hey, round of applause for these guys because they're making it happen. That's my man Goopa on the right. He's wearing a hat. And it's my friend Sandiswa on the left. Let me tell you the story of Goopa. So I met Goopa a few years ago, pre-pandemic. And I met Goopa in a really small country called Eswatini. Eswatini, if you know nothing about this country, has about just north of 1 million people. It sits on the northeastern border of South Africa. What's unique about Eswatini has the highest AIDS rate in the world. About a quarter of the adult population of Eswatini has AIDS. And unfortunately, when you have AIDS and you drink dirty water, drinking dirty water can actually kill you faster than your AIDS will because your immune system is so compromised. We at Thirst Project, we do a lot of our work in Eswatini. So I'm there a few years ago, and I'm in this really small community in the southeastern corner of Eswatini. The community's called Ngamude. I'm there for a week. We're shooting a documentary. And as I'm there, I meet Goopa on the right, Sandiswa on the left. And Goopa is 6 years old. He speaks zero English. But over the course of a week, we just get to have fun together. I'm playing with him, I'm getting to meet his family. We're doing things like, we would spend hours throwing rocks at trees. I mean, hours. So we'd be 20 feet away from a tree, and I'd be throwing a rock. And then he'd throw a rock, trying to hit that same tree. And then Goopa would get bored, so we'd start to throw rocks at people, right? So we had to stop playing the game. And I would, over the course of this week, have a lot of fun with Goopa, but I also knew there was a depth that we couldn't get to because he didn't speak English. So I'll be honest, I took a little advantage of that. Here's what I did. At the time, there was some political, just drama happening in the United States. So I went up to Goopa, he's 6 years old, he speaks no English, and I go, hey Goopa, are you Republican or are you Democrat? Right? You know what he was saying? He goes, I am Goopa. That was powerful, Goopa. You're very bipartisan of you. I respect you, you're a politician. Right? We're getting to hang out, just spend some good time together. Halfway through the week, me hanging out with Goopa, his cousin comes up to me. Her name is Pepile. She's 16 years old. She speaks great English. She says, Evan, looks like you're having so much fun with Goopa. I said, I'm having a blast. I'm having so much fun. And she said, can I tell you a story? I said, sure. She said, when Goopa was 4 years old, so this is 2 years prior to me meeting Goopa. He's 4 years old. He would walk to his community water source every day. Now his community water source was a dugout hole in the ground. And he would collect water and bring it back for his family to drink, to wash with, to cook with. And as he's going and walking to this water source, collecting it, bringing it back to his family, he's also drinking it when he gets home. And one morning, he's 4 years old, he wakes up after drinking this water, and he gets sick. And later on in the day, his stomach starts to hurt. And then later on in the day, he has extreme stomach pain, and then, as a 4-year-old, he starts to urinate blood. And they have no idea what's going on. But as they consult the nurse, later on they figured out that Goopa has this parasite called schistosomiasis. And schistosomiasis is a parasite that lives inside of contaminated water. You can't see it, you can't taste it, but you can get it from either drinking dirty water or simply walking, wading through contaminated water. As I'm hearing this story about Goopa, as a 4-year-old, I met him as a 6-year-old, and I was like, I can't imagine, right? This cute little kid, and he has this disease, and it's pretty visceral, and kind of disgusting. I do some research into the local area and the impact of schistosomiasis. So I go to a nurse locally, and I talk to him, and I say, hey, tell me about schistosomiasis, this waterborne disease in the area. And he said, oh, Evan, actually, let me tell you a story. A few months ago, there was an entire elementary school full of students, a couple hundred. And they all walked to school and walked home in the same direction. They walked home from school one day, they waded through the same river, and they all got schistosomiasis. Hundreds of these elementary school students. They had to cancel school for a few days because of this waterborne disease. He's telling me this story, and I'm like, I can't imagine, right? Elementary school kids all walking home. So I go home and I do some more research on schistosomiasis. So I'm just curious, like, what's the impact of schistosomiasis, not in Eswatini, around the world? Back in 2017, the World Health Organization reported that over 300 million people every year have schistosomiasis. I looked it up more recently, and the number still sits north of 200 million people a year. And the craziest part about schistosomiasis is most of the places that I go and speak, nobody's ever heard of it. Yet hundreds of millions of people are dealing with this waterborne disease that's incredibly visceral, painful, and dangerous. My first story about Goopa is a story to remind everybody in the room that when you drink dirty water, or even when you walk through contaminated water, it can cause very serious issues for people around the world. But it's not just drinking dirty water that's an issue. The very act of collecting or carrying water also has very serious effects on people. Which leads me to my next story. My next story is of my friend Anne. So I met Anne in Chawente, Uganda in 2019, late January. And we were actually looking for a place to stay, my team in Uganda. And she had a bed and breakfast in this area. And we found her, we asked her if we stay for a few days, we stayed. And over the course of the few days that we stayed in Anne's bed and breakfast, she realized we were there, helping to build water projects for communities in need. So she meets me, we're talking one morning, and she says, Evan, can I tell you a story? I said, yeah, sure. She said, Evan, growing up in Uganda, I would wake up as a 13-year-old girl, and I would walk 9 miles, a total of 9 miles, to fetch water for my family. She would wake up at 3 in the morning so she could escape the heat of the day. And she would walk 9 miles, not by herself, but with a group of people, because walking by herself as a 13-year-old girl in the middle of the night was dangerous. And she described this journey of having to walk to fetch water. And she would go to a lake that in the dry season had little to no water available. And when they collected water in the dry season, they would put it in what's called a jerry can, and I'll talk about those in a second, and they'd walk back to their homes. And this 9-mile journey, when they left at 3 a.m., they would try to get back by 10 a.m., like I said, to escape the heat of the day. But in the dry season, with little to no water available, they'd have water in their jugs on their way home, and bees would start to attack them, trying to access what little water was available. And Anne was describing this journey that she had to do almost daily with her friends. She talked to me about the impact of just having to walk to fetch water, not even drinking dirty water, and the time that she had to spend away from her studies, or the time that when women got older, they couldn't go and get a job to contribute for their family. And this story of Anne's, the worst part about it is that it's not unique. All over the world, millions of women and young girls specifically walk hours a day to fetch water. And they collect water commonly in what's called, I said earlier, a jerry can. You can think of it as our version of a yellow or diesel gas can, but when full, it weighs 44 pounds, holds 5 gallons of water. But if you can imagine carrying 44 pounds of water miles a day, it's incredibly physically demanding. The average time that it can take, not even the average, actually, it can take up to 6 or 8 hours to fetch water, but the average distance is about 3.75 miles. So there are 8-year-old girls walking 3.75 miles, carrying full jerry cans of water, which means that, like I said, kids can't go to school. Kids can't get an education. Women can't get jobs. Women can't provide for their families. And if you were to pick up 44 pounds of water and put it on your head, which most people carry jerry cans by putting them on their head for balance, it seems to be easier, and you did it daily, you would start to understand the physical demand of this task. I mean, women and children can develop spinal and pelvic deformities all from collecting and carrying water. Women who are pregnant can have spontaneous miscarriages just from collecting and carrying water. Though it's not just drinking dirty water that's an issue, the very act of collecting and carrying water also has very serious effects on people. Now, I will tell you this because it's special to this district. This jerry can is a powerful symbol. It's a powerful symbol that I would argue for a lot of us, it might be the closest, hopefully, that we ever get to a water crisis. So we've had some key clubs in the area distribute these jerry cans, which you can get them online. We, in the past, before the pandemic, would send them out to schools. And our schools have used jerry cans for a variety of different things. We have filled them up, and we've challenged students to come up and just pick up a full jerry can. And if even for a moment, maybe you could start to experience what women and children experience every single day. And like I said, that might be the closest some of us ever get to the water crisis, carrying a full jerry can of water for a few steps. We've also had some schools take these jerry cans and just use them as a fundraising tool. Walk around their school and fill them up with change, and asking people to donate. Hey, $1 can give somebody clean water for X amount of years. $25 gives some people clean water for life. These jerry cans are powerful, and I know some of them have been distributed to clubs amongst this district. And I want to encourage you, if you leave this presentation saying, maybe we could do something. Maybe the first thing you do is just grab a jerry can. You can even grab a 5-gallon paint bucket, which we've seen people use in the developing world, and fill it up and use it as a tool to educate people about the water crisis. Or maybe, better yet, don't just fill it up, but you could also, at one point, use it as a fundraising tool. Because 100% of donations go directly towards building water projects when you donate to Thirst Project. My point here with Ann's story in this picture is walking to fetch water has very serious effects for people groups and communities around the world. One of the last stories I want to share with you is of my friend Tapsile. This is a picture of Tapsile. I met her a few years ago, again in Eswatini, and she is a teacher in a rural community in Eswatini. And I feel like I have a decent understanding of what life is like as a teacher in the United States. Now, I'm not a teacher, so I won't pretend to know everything, but my twin sister's a teacher, my mom's a teacher, my older sister works in the school system. I can openly admit, I have no idea what life is like as a teacher in Eswatini. So I asked Tapsile, what's it like? What's it like for you to be a teacher in rural Eswatini? And she told me, every single day, this is what her routine was. She would wake up around 6 a.m. and she would go here, to her local water source, to fetch water. She'd fill up this black bucket, which again, it carries about 5 gallons of water, 44 pounds, and then she would put it on her head, and she would walk. She'd walk about a mile to school. So that's Tapsile's commute, walking a mile to school with 44 pounds of water on her head. And when she got to school, she had 15 kids to take care of. And on any given day, the only water they had available to them was this 5 gallons. And Tapsile had to figure out how to use this water not just for drinking, but cooking, washing, etc. So as we met Tapsile and she told us the story, she started to describe the day-to-day situation of the kids at her school. 15 kids, preschoolers. And if you remember, the average American uses 100 gallons of water a day, while Tapsile and 15 other kids only had 5 gallons of water between them. She said that there were seasons where she couldn't grow any food because she couldn't afford to waste that water on food, so kids would go hungry at lunch. She said the kids would drink this water, but they would get sick, and sometimes they'd have to miss school for weeks at a time. I met Tapsile because we planned on building a water project in her community, actually close to her school. So a year later, after meeting Tapsile, I come back to Eswatini. And we make plans to go back to Tapsile's community after we built a water project. We're about half a kilometer away from Tapsile's school. And we built a water project just a few meters away from the front door of her school. And I see this bright green patch. And I'm like, oh, it might be a garden. I pull up to the school, and I get out, and I talk to Tapsile, and then she walks me through this garden that she now has been able to grow because they have access to close, safe water. And I start to ask Tapsile questions. I said, Tapsile, what's it been like now having access to close, safe water? She said, not one kid has missed one day of school because we have access to close, safe water. And that's the power of water projects. That's the power of what we can do in establishing for communities in need. And so I talk a lot in my presentations, oftentimes, about the problem of the water crisis. About how it's not just drinking, it's not just walking, it's not just food insecurity. There are so many problems that can be associated to lack of access to safe, clean water. One of them we might be able to relate to now in the last few years. If you remember, March 2020, I don't know where you were, I'm assuming most of us were in school, But in March of 2020, we were all asked as a global community, as the world shut down, to do three things. We were asked to socially distance ourselves. We were asked to wear masks, and we were asked to wash our hands. But how can you wash your hands if you don't have access to close, safe water? We were called upon by foreign ministries to respond, do disaster relief to the pandemic in those first 6 months, because communities didn't even have access to the clean water they needed to fight off a pandemic like COVID-19. I'm sitting here telling you, man, regardless of the issues that you care about, I think you care about water, because whether it's gender equality, food insecurity, health and sanitation, quality education, the pandemic, all these issues are connected to access to clean water. And the amazing part is together, there's a solution. We at Thirst Project, we build freshwater wells in developing communities, and it changes everything. Disease rates drop upwards of 88% overnight. Child mortality rates drop upwards of 90% overnight. When we build water projects, we've seen kids who can now go to school and get an education because they don't have to walk hours a day to fetch water. We've met women who can get jobs to provide for their families because they don't have to walk multiple miles a day to fetch water. And the work that we do at Thirst Project, it's nothing revolutionary. All we do is we hire local contractors. And these contractors take their big rigs and they drill deep, 200 to 300 feet down into the water table to establish a freshwater well for communities in need. Now, I say all that, I'm going to go back to the very beginning, just to remind you of who we are and what we do. Because Thirst Project started 15 years ago, based on that idea of success. Everybody in the world deserves access to clean water. But rooted in this idea that we couldn't do it without you, as students. That all came together. It was a brainchild of students just like you. Thirst Project not only identified its target community as students in the beginning, Thirst Project was started by students, just like you. Back 15 years ago, a group of college students came together, they heard about the water crisis, said, man, we gotta do something about it. And so they went out on Hollywood Boulevard, arguably one of the most famous streets in the entire country, and they just started talking to people. And through these conversations, these college students talked to a couple local teachers, told them about the water crisis. These teachers said, man, I love what you're telling me. Will you come to my school? Tell my students about the water crisis. So these college students went around Los Angeles, gave a few high school groups presentations. These high schoolers, after hearing these presentations, said, man, do something about this. Let's raise some money. And a few months later, $12,000 was raised. 15 years later, now we raised over $13 million, working with students just like you. We're hearing about Thirst Project, hearing about the global water crisis, and making a decision to do something about it. That's what, again, brings me here today. It's been incredible to see what students around the world have done for the water crisis. It's been incredible to see what students in this room have done for the global water crisis. And I think about key clubs, and to mention one specifically by name, like Beaver Dam, and I think about the key clubs in here who have been supporting us for years, whether it's talent shows or taking jerry cans and raising money. And then I think about you all. I think about the district board. Like you all made a decision this past year. You said, you know what, we want to educate our district about the global water crisis and Thirst Project. We want to try to challenge people to raise money, to support in amazing ways. And I think it's incredible that I sit amongst a community of people who believe that the water crisis is real, it's important, and you believe that we as young people can do something about it. So that's where I'm going to end in the next few minutes. I want to talk about, man, what we at Thirst Project are doing with Key Club together to end the global water crisis now, right now. But I need you to know a few things as I wrap this up. I'm going to jump up on the podium for dramatic effect, because that's what we do when we close the presentation. A couple important things for you to know. The first is this. Over the last 15 years, it's been really important for us at Thirst Project in working with students, as the students are raising money, for those students to give in confidence, for students to know that 100% of your donations go directly towards building water projects. We don't take any money for admin or overhead expenses. I don't come here looking at an audience full of people being like, hey, y'all are rich. I don't come here knowing like, hey, I'm going to speak to Key Club International, I'm going to speak to Key Club Districts because I know they have a ton of money, right? I was in high school not too long ago. I was poor. And then I went to college. And I didn't think I'd get more poor, but I got more poor. And honestly, because I wasn't living on my parents' coin anymore, let's be honest. So, you think you're poor now, we're going to get a little more poor before we can get less poor, you know what I'm saying, right? So I need to remind you that I don't come here saying, well, I can't wait to get all the money from Key Club International. Man, I come here because I am still talking to key clubbers that I spoke to 8 years ago, who still care about the water crisis, who are getting internships and jobs and are choosing majors at universities dedicated to not even just the water crisis, but to development, to community resourcing. I come here because I believe we can plant seeds today that, as cheesy as it sounds, will grow tomorrow into life-changing opportunities, moments, and experiences. So I need you to know, whether you, over the course of the next year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on what age you are, depending on where you're at in your key club life cycle, and if you were to give $1, 100% of that dollar goes directly towards building water projects. We don't take any of that money, like I said, for admin or overhead costs. The only way we're able to do that, we have a very generous group of people. They make up our board of directors, and they, unlike us, are not poor. They are insanely rich, right? And they give a lot of money, knowing that none of us will see a water project. But all of it will go to fund things like our operations, our admin costs, etc. So I want you just to know that as I invite you into what's happening with Key Club, not at the district level even, but at the international level, as I wrap up this presentation. I'm going to click through some slides, and I'm going to let you in on some conversations that I've been having with some international trustees, the international board. You know, we at Thirst Project believe, because we're one of the few partners of Key Club International, it's important for us to create a space on an annual basis where we can invite every single Key Clubber, regardless of what club you're in, regardless of how much or how little resources you have available to you. It's important for us to invite you into an easy way to get involved in our work and what we're doing. So a couple years ago, we created this new campaign. It's called Key Club Walks. We created this campaign based on this idea that women and children have to walk every single day to fetch water. What if we, as a group of people, walked? One, because it's good for our health. It's improving over and over and over again. What if we walked? But we didn't just walk without purpose. We walked. And as we walked, as we took steps over the course of a given month, we would remember the women and children who are forced to walk, not for leisure, not for a campaign, but they're forced to collect water for their families. And in that process, in that journey of walking, what if we went out to our family and friends? We said, hey, I'm trying to be intentional about walking this month, as crazy as it sounds. But here's why. Because I'm not only walking, but I'm raising money to support this organization that's trying to end the water crisis. And would you support me? Would you help? So we dreamed up this idea of Key Club Walks. It's a campaign where we challenge Key Clubbers not just to walk, because again, especially in the pandemic, we found it important to focus on Key Clubbers' health, physical, mental, emotional, etc. But in walking, we could also create an opportunity for students to raise money. So that's what I'm inviting you into today. Now, you as a district board, you all actually created a pretty amazing Kickstarter. I know we built a campaign together that we launched in late February, just to spread awareness, just to talk to you all about Thirst Project, who we are, and what we're doing. And now I'm here, trying to spread more awareness to this entire group. Hey, I'm here on behalf of Thirst Project. Here's who we are. Here's what we do. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't invite this group into doing something about it. And how much of a waste of my time and your time would it be if you sat in this room, you got up in just a few minutes because I'm getting ready to be done, you left, and you said, man, that was pretty crazy, the water crisis. But I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm too busy. I got sports to play. I got things to do. I got classes to take, tests to pass, etc. I want to challenge you with this thought that there's a problem that exists. You are the solution, and there's a really practical call to action that we want to give you. I want to invite you into this campaign. I want you to be part of it. Here are the details. It's pretty timely. We found a couple things to be true. We know at this time, a lot of different districts are having their district conventions, their SLCs, whatever you call them. The districts coming together, and we're passing the torch of leadership. And that's not just true at the district level. Oftentimes that can be true at the club level. I don't know your club's specific story or journey, but here's what I do know. At the end of the year, oftentimes key clubs can wind down their service year, have not a lot to do in the months of April or May as we get closer and closer to the end of the school year. We wanted to create an opportunity for key clubbers to still have something to do as we pass the torch of leadership at the end of the year. This campaign is going to start in just a few weeks, April 3rd. It's going to run through the entirety of the month of April, all the way to May 1st. And here's the simple call to action that we're inviting every single Key Club member to be a part of. Hey, could you go out over the course of a month? And could you walk 50 miles? Some of you might be like, Evan, walk 50 miles in a month? I got some good news for you. These are not my statistics, they're from the Mayo Clinic. Average American walks 1.5 to 2 miles a day. So if you're average, then you've already hit that goal. You're good. I'm just challenging you to be intentional about it. Could you walk 50 miles over the course of a given month? And in that process, in that journey, could you raise $50? Now, for some of us, if I say raise $50, that might seem super aggressive. You're like, yeah, raise $50. Did you not just forget? You told us all that we're poor, and I am poor, right? Like, don't forget you told us that. If I was in high school sitting in this room, I can remember a few years ago, I would be like, there's no way I can do that. For some of you, it might not seem super aggressive, it might seem super realistic. I just want to challenge you with this thought that this is an opportunity for you to participate in the campaign. And for some of you, it might be as easy as going home and asking family members and friends to donate. For some of you, it might be a little harder. I know some of you have jobs, and some of you are doing things. I don't know where you fall, but this is just the challenge that we wanted to present to every single Key Club member, and here's why. Because we've also seen, not just unique to Key Club, but all the different high school service organizations we work with, oftentimes, leaders can get caught up doing, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the work being done by 20% of the people. But we believe, and I've heard this for the last 10 years, as I go to these conferences and I talk to Key Clubbers, and I'm like, oh, what's your role in Key Club? And if they're not part of the district board, I'm often met with, I'm just a member. I'm just a Key Club member. I'm like, just a member? I'm like, well, I'm just never a member. And if I go to your high schools, I bet that you represent a small fraction of your high school population. So if you're in the room, this might seem a little cheesy or cliche, but I actually need to remind and promise you that it's not, and this is true. You're not just a member if you're a Key Club member. You have power. And you do care about the world. You do have opportunity in service and leadership, and that's what we want to invite you into. Because oftentimes, Key Club members can get lost in the mix of Key Club leaders being the leaders of the club. And as cheesy as this sounds too, you're all leaders. I don't know how you define leadership. I define leadership as your ability to influence people. You all have the ability to influence people, and that's what this campaign is all about. And it's just 0.5% of Key Clubbers did this. 0.5% of Key Clubbers did this campaign. We could raise $50,000. 0.5%. So I would love to invite this entire district to be part of this campaign. I did this last week with Georgia. We have people right now, different district conventions all across the country, doing exactly what I'm doing, just inviting Key Club International to be a part of something bigger than yourself. So, if this is something you're like, okay, I can do it, but this is not something I'm going to hold you accountable to. I'm not going to knock on your door if you signed up and said yes to it and you didn't complete it. But if you're like, I'm interested, I want to get more information and resources. We try to make it easy. We try to make it foolproof. So we created a quick QR code. So you can easily bust out your phone right now. If you want to be a part of it, it's a quick form. You can sign up for the campaign. It's going to ask you to put in a couple quick pieces of information, but I want to invite you into it. This doesn't bind you to anything. This is just an opportunity for you to be a part of this campaign. And it's something that we didn't just build a thirst project, but we built alongside the International Board. So you can click on that QR code, you fill out some information. Once you put in your email, it will ask you to subscribe to campaign emails. We're not going to send you emails forever. We're not going to send you emails for even like 2 months. It'll just send you email updates so you can get more information as to how do I go and raise $50? How can I practically go and carve out time to walk 50 miles? So I'm going to leave this up as I actually close the presentation, but we wanted to give you an easy, quick, tangible way to act based on the presentation that I just gave. Key Club Walks, April 3rd, May 1st. We're inviting all of Key Club International. I know this is just Liam, but I promise you, this is a lot bigger than what's happening in this room, and there's an opportunity to change thousands and thousands of lives. So thank you in advance if you're like, hey, I want to participate. If you don't, it's totally okay too. As I wrap up, there's a few things I want to remind you of. I'll keep this up for a second longer. So a few things I want to remind you of as Key Clubbers. The first is this. I don't know where you come from. I know some people were born in Wisconsin because you raised your hand at the very beginning of the presentation. Some people weren't born in Wisconsin. You know where I come from. But regardless of where you come from, and regardless of where you're going, meaning where you choose to go to college, if you choose to go to college, what job you choose to have, what state you choose to live in, what country you choose to live in, we need to all agree on just a handful of things. And the first is this. You, as a young person, have everything in your power right now to make a tangible difference in the world today. You do not need to be older. You do not need to have more money. You do not need to have a higher education to make a difference in the world. I promise you, you have everything that you need right now. And if you've ever bought into the lie that says, if you want to change the world, you probably need to have a little bit more money. Or if you want to change the world, you probably need to have a little bit higher of education, at least graduate high school, right? Or if you really want to change the world, you probably need to have just access to more resources in general, or be a little older, at least 18. They're all lies. I want to challenge you with the thought that do not buy into the lie that sometimes culture and society can try to convince us is true, which is, well, you're a young person. You don't have what it takes to make a difference right now. I have proof. I have thousands of emails, text messages, phone call logs with amazing young people just like you who are doing incredible things for the world. You have everything in your power right now to make a tangible difference in the world today. Second thing I think we need to agree upon. Regardless of the issues that you care about, I do believe this room cares about water. Why? Because besides air, it's the second most basic resource that we need to survive. And without it, we maybe have 3 days to live. Now, I also know the special part of Key Club is that I'm speaking to an audience full of people that hopefully care about a lot of different issues. Hopefully, I'm speaking to an audience full of people that have hearts for issues like things I mentioned earlier: gender equality, food insecurity, education initiatives, health and sanitation. The list goes on and on. If you care about those issues, you care about the water crisis. And maybe our goal is not to convince people that the water crisis is a big deal, because that can be hard for people living in the United States. That can be hard for people that have never experienced the water crisis. Maybe our goal is to convince people that care about gender equality that gender equality is connected to the water crisis, and then we can get people to care about the work that we're doing. So that's my second point. Regardless of the issues you care about, you do care about the global water crisis. And my last point: time is everything. And the time that you're going to spend here over the next 48 hours together, or a little bit more, a little bit less, it is so incredibly valuable, and it will contribute to your short-term and long-term success. So live in these moments. Breathe these moments with people that you're meeting for the first time and people that you've spent maybe the last 5, 10, 15 years of your life with. Do you want to be successful? Well, success follows in the footsteps of community. So build the relationships and be a good steward of old relationships during the course of the next 2 days. I'm really pour into relationships because I do believe that they matter. They're deeply important. I'll share a quote with you. This is one of the last things I'll say. It's a quote that talks about the importance of time, but also talks about the importance of you stepping up and being a leader. It says, sometimes all it takes is 20 seconds of insane courage. Sometimes all it takes is 20 seconds of embarrassing bravery, and I promise you something great will come with it. Some of you are 20 seconds away. In the name of courage, if you're willing to look a little bit insane, something great is on the other end. Some of you are 20 seconds away of being brave, but you also need to be willing to be a little bit embarrassed. But in that bravery, something amazing is on the other side of it. What do I mean by that? Some of you are a conversation away, a relationship away from something incredible. That's exactly what happened when we started Thirst Project. Just a group of students who had a few conversations, and in 20 seconds, 30 seconds, on Hollywood Boulevard, everything changed. And that's why I'm here. So I want to say, on behalf of the Thirst Project, on behalf of our board, on behalf of our staff, on behalf of the people that we serve, thanks for being in partnership with us. Thank you all for inviting me to be part of the space, and thanks for believing in the work that we do. I promise you we don't take it for granted. If I don't know you, which I don't know most of you, I haven't met you, I'd love to meet you over the next day that I'm here. I have a workshop tomorrow, and I'd love for you to come to this workshop tomorrow. But more important than any of that, and I'd love for you to walk out of this room believing more in yourself than when you walked into the room. I'd love for you to walk out of the room caring more about the world than when you walked in the room. And I'd love for you to leave this room just knowing a little bit more about the Thirst Project and the work that we do than when you walked in the room. It matters, and you matter. Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.